Hello, I'm Miss Mare,
And I'm Miss Andrea.
and we are Cheese Press Publishing.
Yes, we are.
So we do videos about history, delved into current politics now.
Oh, I don't know what happened.
I don't know what happened, but history and current politics for
And
the moment.
so we don't just do videos about history, but we write curriculum.
About
we write
history.
curriculum.
Mhm.
So,
It's history and language arts.
yes, it's history with
Let's
language
get
arts
started.
integration.
Features here.
So, last week we were writing history while listening to the news.
Some of it. We had to turn that off at some point. It was
Yeah.
very distracting.
But they were talking about the end of DEI, and we've talked about the end of DEI here in a previous video, I think 2 weeks ago. And the thought came up, no DEI. So we're no longer asking corporations to be purposeful in getting a sampling of the population to come in and interview for tests.
We don't see a value in having
Yeah.
that cross section of the community involved in the process.
So if we're not going to do that, just maybe.
So right now it seems like there's not anything to replace it with as a philosophy, but you know what? We've got a good idea.
Yeah.
We can solve this for you.
Yeah.
So cool. We want a meritocracy, right? So how do we get a meritocracy?
Civil service exams.
So for anything and everything, there's no picture, there's no name. You just take the test and the highest score gets a job. We got there because this is one of the things that when you're teaching history and you're discussing world history, because we don't just teach Western history or American history, we teach American history, but we teach world history. And one of the things that you find out when teaching world history is that there was this revolutionary idea in the first century of the modern era, common era, that was this idea of civil service exams, and it happened in China. The emperor that was overseeing it technically was Gaozong,
Right.
but let's be real, he was controlled by Empress Wu. And
Yes.
so this was Empress
His
Wu's
mother.
idea. And they established a system of civil service exams. The point of it was that you couldn't work in the government because of what your last name was, who your family was, how much money you had. You had to prove your chops to be able
because
to
she
get
had
an
come
administrative job.
into her role accidentally. As she was not part of the aristocracy, she wanted other people to have the same opportunity to get into these high-ranking jobs based on their merit, their intelligence.
And this was also a recognition that there were a lot of people on the one end who were corrupt and unqualified but had positions because of who they knew, but that there were people who were very talented who were being overlooked because they didn't have an end. And so that was the problem that they were looking to solve when they first instituted these civil service exams.
Right.
Now, this isn't from that point on. It was adopted by other people.
Yes.
It didn't just stay in China. This is
Yeah,
not
it spread
solely
during the medieval
a
age.
Chinese thing.
Yeah.
And so when Europe picked it up, what they were specifically looking for was non-technical moral and political theory understanding. And even today, in the United States, there is in fact a civil service exam. If you want to work for the post office, if you want to work for the Secret Service, if you want to work in any number of agencies, you have to take a civil service exam to qualify for it. So why doesn't this extend to all areas of government?
Just asking.
Why don't we require that elected officials, before they may place their name on the ballot, pass a civil service exam with a qualifying score in order to be considered for the role? Because we want a meritocracy, right? So we want people who demonstratively can prove that they, in fact, are capable of doing the job and doing it properly. So one of the things that we brought with us today is the practice test for the civil service exam. Was it not there at the top?
Okay.
Service exam practice test. So we're going to go through some of these questions and see what's on the one that's given to a handful of agencies. And we're going to do this out loud.
Okay. One loading. Okay. The correctly spelled word. And the word that they're going for is homogenize.
Yep.
The second one.
I think you are correct that it is the second one. My brain wants it to be the third one, but that would probably be the British spelling because they
Yes.
use S's instead of Z's.
So homogenize. The third one is homoginise. Okay. Another choose a correctly spelled word. This word is sieve or sieve. It's the
bottom
fourth one, SIEVE.
Why are we so correctly spelled words?
Why are we doing a spelling test?
That's wild. That to me doesn't belong on a doesn't belong. But out of 38 questions, for 3 of them to be, can you spell this?
Truly, TRULY.
Yes.
Let's see how far this gets us. Sincerely, TINCREY. Transient, the last one, TRASIENT.
Yes, if you asked me to...
and
and
now,
we have to unlock 33 more questions. So, things that generally appear on the civil service test, since apparently our practice test isn't working at the moment. But we could use another one if there's another one out there that doesn't require us to, an email after 3 questions. So there is a section on verbal ability, using, choosing the best word, reading a passage and answering questions about the main idea. That does seem important. What's your reading comprehension? Math skills. I was seeing something that goes through Algebra 1, which makes sense, to be able to see if there are mistakes in basic math if you're dealing with money or anything like that.
Well, this is really good. If you earn $15 an hour and work 30 hours, how much will you make?
You should be able to answer questions like that.
$450.
I accept that that's something you should be able to answer a question on. So there's clerical skills, the ability to alphabetize, to identify formats for a business letter, stuff like that. That seems important.
Questions are a group of different question types, all of which measure your English skills. Some measure vocabulary, such as analogies or sentence completions, while others measure grammar, such as rephrasing. Let's look at a few examples. 1. After Rachel and Sarah finished watching the movie, blank turned off the TV. Her turned off the TV. Them turned off the TV. They turned off the TV, or themselves turned off the TV.
Which is obviously C. They turned off the TV.
Yes.
Oh, and they give us the answer this time.
Okay.
Correct answer is C.
Any recent blank in jobs is likely to have been blank in the South. Any recent increase in jobs is likely to have been concentrated in the South. Any recent increase, spelled poorly, in jobs is likely to have been concentration in the South. Any recent increases in jobs is likely to have been concentrated in the South. Any recent increasing in jobs is likely to have been concentrated in the South. And the answer is A. Yeah.
Yeah, no. That very, but that one was a little bit more nuanced, because in colloquial speech, go back to it.
Yeah, right here.
In colloquial speech, C and D might be heard, because if you're not accustomed to increase being the way that you would see that in jobs, increases, I can see people who would be like, maybe.
I'd rather the person running the government know the difference.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
You say it.
But that one, at least there's some nuance to that, and I appreciate nuance.
Okay. Which of the following sentences is grammatically correct?
Incorrect.
Incorrect. Think A. Schools have officially banned the consumption of candy, soda, and chips on their premises. B. The Surgeon General has been known to make unannounced visits to the hospital. The Surgeon General has been known to make unannounced visits to the hospitals to ensure that patients are receiving appropriate care. C. C. The new office dress codes includes no jeans, closed-toe shoes, and collared shirts. D. Children playing in the skate park must wear helmets for safety reasons.
C.
Yeah, no jeans. Includes no jeans, right?
There's
closed-toe shoes and collared shirts. It's the opposite. It's saying the opposite.
Yeah.
No jeans, closed-toe shoes, no collared shirts.
Repeat. So you can say that the dress code includes, or the dress codes include, but an S is not needed for both words. Also, that is that valid statement about that, but because it says no jeans, closed-toed shoes, and collared shirts, it's also ambiguously worded.
Right.
Because you would expect that you would have no closed-toed shoes and no collared shirts, the way that that's written.
That's picked up on.
Right.
Is that it was like double negative.
No, I was picking up on the codes and includes was not correct.
Yeah.
But also degrees in English, so.
My minor was in English. I'm smart. Okay. Seating arrangements. Review the facts below. Tim lives in a big apartment. Abby lives in a small apartment. There are no big apartments in Tinyville. Small apartments have one bedroom. Based on the information above, which of the following must be true? Tim lives in Tinyville.
Not that one.
Abby's apartment must have one bedroom. Abby lives in Tinyville. Tim and Abby live in the same town.
Only B.
Yes. Correct. B.
Yeah.
Abby's apartment, one bedroom. We know Abby lives in a small apartment, and we know that small apartments have one bedroom. Therefore, we can conclude that Abby's apartment has one bedroom. Blah, blah, blah.
And they give you the different answer choices because there were two things that could have been true, but we don't have enough information to know for sure.
This next question is not something I can do verbally, but it's a pattern deal. It's like,
oh, so
it's
there's a
facing this
square.
way.
It's a square with a line.
So facing this way, facing that way.
Square with a line.
Facing this way,
Square with a line.
facing that
Square
way,
with a line.
facing that way
Square
again.
with a line.
And so what's next?
I'm good.
It doesn't even show A.
Oh, it sure doesn't. Like, we don't have all of the answers here.
It didn't show well on the cell phone. But the answer is, it looks like facing down.
Yeah, because we have a couple of the pictures and they aren't real.
I'm going to skip the next one too.
Because it's also a visual thing.
Okay, so get the other things that we were sent. Because that one kind of taps out.
So
there.
I understand all of the language stuff and your reading
it's a video.
comprehension and things like that. Because that's your communication.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in any field that requires for you to interact with other humans, you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to understand written communication because emails, you might work on documents with teammates, up here.
I'm just scrolling down to see where the test starts.
But yeah, there's so much involved in communication that requires written communication, and you have to be able to generate that communication for others. You also have to be able to understand what others have sent to you.
I mean, I'm just dirt, apparently, because when I was in high school and college, during that time, the exception of that one job where I was hired immediately, not a good idea to take the job where you're hired immediately in 5 minutes, there was a test involved. So I wanted to work at McDonald's. I took a test. I wanted to work at JCPenney. I took a test. I wanted to be a temp. I took all the tests and a typing speed test.
Even like my oldest for a little while worked at Waffle House and had to take a test.
They will make you take tests that have nothing to do with the job, but I guess they're trying to see how you're going to interact with people, how you're going to receive information, all this jazz.
I remember a low-level SAT exam, just like a shortened, abridged type of SAT exam. And I, from the mid-'80s through the mid-'90s, every job I walked into, I had to take that test.
That is ridiculous. But it feels like the employer will have the same test as someone else's test, and like is not tailored to the specific positions. Mm-hmm. Like, you're going to take the same test for a server as if you were a salesman. It's the same test. And you have to click through, and instead of the site somehow finding a way to save that, you'll just keep taking all these tests, these personality, all these things, even for jobs that you're working at a warehouse.
Your test scores,
right. You should be able to. But then it'll be the same thing, and whether you're in the warehouse where you won't see anybody other than the product, maybe someone else, you're taking the same thing as a hostess at Olive Garden.
But here's the thing. You and I would have had our choice of jobs because we would have passed that test. That's my whole point. We're not looking at DEI. Give me the math test. Give me the spelling test. Give me the reading comprehension test. See if I can read a passage and remember the answers 10 minutes later. Give it to me.
Because what comes back to is the most highly educated demographic at this moment in our culture is Black women.
Come through.
Well, yes, but also because they had to be.
Yeah.
Because in order to not be accused of, well, you were only hired to fill a quota.
Don't ever do that again.
You have to have greater credentials than the people who you are up against for the job. And that's been the trend for 40 years. I don't know that that's the exact date because I didn't look that number up on my way in here. But that has been the trend for a while. Is that more Black women have doctorates within that demographic. The ratio is higher than any other demographic. And it's been that way for a while.
So each business, we should have a test for
Mhm.
future employees.
So are you saying that higher elects don't have to take, in the government and in politics, they don't take a test?
No.
Could you imagine?
Would we be in the situation we were in if they did?
We've both seen politicians at a news conference giving incorrect basic information about other countries.
Or about our current policies or American history.
If you're going to be in the government, you should be able to pass an AP political science exam.
Which was bringing me to what I was about to ask, is what the content should be. Now, if you go all the way back to Empress Wu, China, civil service exams, it was philosophy, it was political science, it was culture, it was truly comprehensive.
You have to be able to operate amongst the intelligent people in your society.
Well, it was that you had to have this complete and full understanding of what your society was founded on, of the basis of that society. What are the cultural things that we've all agreed on, that this is our culture? And at that time it was Confucianism, largely. And so those were the kinds of things that were included in that. Again, we talked about what they did in Europe, where it's morality and political theory.
You should be able to pass an American history. Look, I'm just setting AP as a standard right now, right? You should be able to pass the SAT exam at 40 years old. I'm just saying that's a little hard, but at least by a certain number, right?
And how are these people elected? What are their qualifications as far as we know? And then how
Somebody decided they liked them. Here's the process. For a candidate to qualify to be on the ballot, depending on the office, there are some requirements that are generally age and citizenship status. For instance, if we're talking about the president, you have to be a naturally born United States citizen. You cannot be naturalized. So you cannot have immigrated and gotten your U.S. citizenship. You had to have been U.S. citizen from the beginning. And you have to be at least 35 years old. That's what's set out in the Constitution. So we have some age requirements for some offices. We have some citizenship requirements for some offices. For Congress, you have to live in your district. So if you're running for the 9th district here in Georgia, you have to live in the 9th district here in Georgia in order to be a representative from here. Beyond that, what will happen is a candidate will go, there's a day in, speaking of Georgia, because this is where we are. In Georgia, if you want a state or anything that's on a statewide level, there's a day at the Capitol building. You go down and you file paperwork and you say, I would like to be considered for this position. I'm running as this party. In Georgia,
there needs to be some ambition.
In Georgia, you're running either as a Democrat or as a Republican. If you are not running as one of those two parties, your paperwork has to also include a certain number of signatures from your whatever it is that you're seeking to represent. So you're running for a statewide office. You're running for Secretary of State. Then your signatures have to represent the entire state of Georgia. And it's a percentage. In Georgia, it's an overly burdensome percentage, but it's a percentage. You get signatures from registered voters here in Georgia. And you can file that petition with your paperwork and you turn it into the state and say, I am going to run for this position. And so you have declared, I am a candidate, and then they put you on the ballot. And in a primary, you're going to have primary opponents from the Democratic Party, you're going to have primary opponents from the Republican Party, and then, whoever election will then be put on the general election ballot.
So how do you even get the ambition to want to do that? Typically, it's somebody with some money saying, hey, I like you, let me back you as a candidate. Chances are that person with the money is choosing someone they feel they can control.
So that is route onto the ballot. Another route onto the ballot is, I know that I have enough connections and I know enough people that I can raise the funds to be able to support the campaign, because campaigns are expensive. You have to pay for advertising. You have to, there is a filing fee to get on the ballot, so you're paying that filing fee.
This is how it should work, what you were saying right now.
No, this is how it works sometimes.
But I'm saying, that versus I just said, this is a preferred route.
Well, yes.
As far as the way we think.
Yes. So somebody's taken the time, they've built their network, and they say, I know enough people who are willing to write me checks that I feel like I can raise enough money to be able to mount a campaign successfully. When it's to finances, campaign finance laws are no joke. And whoever is running that campaign is legally on the hook for every single penny that comes in, goes out, and making sure that all of that is above board, all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. And that's some significant jail time if you're not know what you're doing. Inadvertent accidental mistakes can involve some serious jail time. So you need, whoever's doing your campaign finance stuff, you need to know that they know what they're doing for their own protection. But as a candidate, you need to know that they're.
This is why you see in certain cities, after someone has served as mayor or whatever, you see them and or someone in their staff going to jail.
Campaign finance is no joke. But no, that's the.
So no tests,
No.
no IQ tests, no. I'm pretty sure the drug test, right?
Nope.
Oh my god!
Absolutely not.
Really?
Because other jobs actually require experience and knowledge, and for you to prove that you can do the job. And that's not ever been a part of our system. Like from the very beginning. Like, don't get me wrong. These are not new problems. If anybody tells you that the mess that we are currently in is new,
there's a reason that relatives that we have, like Bushes and Bushes, we have these family dynasties that end up staying in that realm.
It's because of connections. It's because of, the experience. Once you've done it successfully once, replicating that
should
easier.
be able to do it.
So there are a lot of things inherent in the system that have caused the predicament that we're currently in. But going back to Jefferson's election, this is not new. This nonsense has been part of our political process from the very, very beginning. Is greatly enhanced by the fact that we only have two political parties of any meaning. Washington told us straight up that a two-party system would be very problematic, and here we are.
If we are educated and we are taking these tests and we are doing what we have to do, which I'm speaking in a perfect world, then we have power to elect or pay attention to the people that would do the best for the jobs in a perfect world speaking.
The educated people aren't choosing the presidency because they're outnumbered.
Yes.
And I'm not saying anything bad about people who have lesser education, but I'm saying that people run campaigns in a way to take advantage of the naivety of people.
There has also been a political movement to demonize those with education because people in power know that an educated populace is the most dangerous threat to their power.
After artists.
Artists and the educated are kind of on with each other. Again, this is nothing new. Because I ran down that quote about artists the other day. Actually, here, let me get this, because I saved it here. Beware of artists, because they mix with all classes of society and therefore are the most dangerous. So this is a philosophy and a thought that most people were thinking that this came from the McCarthy era. It did not. During communism and everything else, it was in a letter written to Queen Victoria.
Interesting.
It came from her husband's uncle, King Leopold, was telling her, and that was his advice.
Because artists see everything. Artists hang out with
Everyone.
the dredges of society, but they also mingle with the higher ups because that's who's buying art from them.
That's
so they see the entire social and economic disparity, and they represent that back in their art and their words.
Which is then coming back to the whole diversity movement that is being undermined from the outset, where when you have diversity and you can see across the various aspects of humanity, whether that diversity is in economics, whether that diversity is in race, whether that diversity is in cultural upbringing, whether it's in immigration status, like what country you're from, having diversity is going to give you a greater insight into everything. And it undermines those who are in power who want to divide people so that they can maintain that power, because if the divisions mean that people are too busy fighting amongst themselves, then they can't be worried about what the government is doing.
I mean, that's why I believe in transparency so much, because if everything's on the table, then people can make better decisions. Floors me that large corporations don't fight for DEI because it shows up in their sales. it shows up in their sales. For instance, say you run, I don't know, Abercrombie and Finch. You're only selling to a certain demographic because you're advertising a certain demographic. And then when you try to sell outside that demographic, you make huge, glaring social faux pas because you have no one of the demographic that you're trying to advertise to go, that's a little racial. You might not want blackface right there.
Anywhere ever? How about anywhere ever?
But, that's why it's so important to have a diverse C-suite. And then diverse marketers. And then diverse middle managers. Because they can go, oh, wait a minute. I worked at a carpet place a long time ago. And I was just joking with my boss. But shocked he heard me. He was a Jewish man. And it was Christmas season, coming up Christmas season. And so everyone wants to get their carpets changed out for the holidays. And he's like, oh, and he came to us. He was a very interesting man. I ended up quitting. He spoke to me wrong. Anyway, he came to us and said, what do you think about my Christmas advert? And he was Jewish, so he had Christmas, Hanukkah, and he may have even had something Muslim on there because he was trying to cover all his bases. And I said, you forgot Kwanzaa. He nearly died.
Oh.
He's like, we must have Kwanzaa. I'm like, I'm joking. He's like, no. We must have Kwanzaa. Tell me about Kwanzaa. I'm like, I don't know about Kwanzaa, my dude. Let me go find out. I'll come back to you tomorrow. But, he was right. You're having family gatherings coming up. You want to change your carpet. So you need to put everyone's little representation in there to get the bigger reach. And for companies who choose to ignore that, I don't know. Everybody's complaining right now that certain demographics have tapped out of the economy. Don't know how long they can stay tapped out of the economy because eventually you're going to have to buy some things. But people are just sitting back going, I'll wait.
Well,
and
eventually
that's
you have to
why,
buy things,
because
but
people are disgruntled. When people get disgruntled, they become very tight in their pockets.
they do.
Mm-hmm.
And there are also alternative places to buy things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's certainly convenient to go to the grocery
Auntie
store next door.
Esther, 2 blocks down, can make cakes just as good as Kroger.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying. Growing up in the hood, you've said you've grown up in the hood. Where'd your mama get her cakes from? Because everybody went to my brother Michael because he made crazy pound cakes.
Yeah.
So don't mind diversity. Decide that you're not going to look at your employment prospects evenly and make sure that you've represented all of the viewpoints, all of the economic disparities, whatever you have. Decide you're going to fold in and just serve one demographic and then wonder why the guy across the street has more business. That's on you. But my solution is, okay, if this is where we are, if we're in a post-DEI society.
We're in a post-racial society.
We're in a post-racial society, then guess what doesn't matter? My face.
Right.
Or your face.
Or our names.
Or our names.
Or your ages.
Or your ages.
That's that. Or our ages.
Yeah. So
Let's
we're all going to
just take a
sit.
test and find out who the sharpest mind is. And yeah, tailor the test to your business.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get the best applicant. And whoever shows up for orientation shows up. And you need to work with them for 6 months. And prove that they're not the best for the job.
Because according to your test, they were qualified.
So if you hire someone in a wheelchair and your building doesn't have adequate wheelchair,
I mean, they're
service,
supposed
you
to
gotta
by
fix
law.
that. You
Well,
gotta
they
fix
were
it.
supposed to by law.
No,
Right.
that's still
That
still
they're holding on to
encoded.
that? Okay.
Well, because some of that's actually in the Constitution,
Okay.
and some of that is some of that you can't just change the way that you can a policy.
Mm-hmm.
So the DEI was a policy that was not enshrined in law. DEI as a policy came about because there are laws that are anti-discrimination.
Right. I mean, these things only come about because the actual laws were not followed.
Or were not being followed well.
Right. Because every civil rights law has an additional law that came out the next year to clarify the law that was written that wasn't followed.
Right.
So.
Because there are ways to follow laws that are very narrow and, okay, we're following the letter of this law and, still be okay. And so when that happens, sometimes you have to pass 2 or 3 more iterations of it to be like, okay, really? The
Okay.
spirit of it was this.
Historically, what civil service exams did was allow a greater pool of applicants to apply for these governmental jobs, which created a tighter bureaucracy, and things were better run.
Well, what it also did is because when you have a system, you have a culture, you have a government, you have an administrative system that is built on nepotism. It's built on who do you know? It's built on how much money do you have in your pocket. That is your feeding ground for fraud, waste, and abuse. When you have an open system where the people who are being chosen for the jobs are there because they understand what they're doing, because they understand the culture, because they understand the political system, because they understand the history, because they understand how these things work, and they know how to do their jobs. Not only are they going to be better at doing their jobs, you can hire fewer people and get the job done because the person there is skilled labor, but then you also have the opportunity, there's less chance of corruption because these people are coming from all walks of life.
And they're not answering to the same people.
Right. The gatekeeper is a numerical score, not an individual person.
Right.
So in theory, you've got a more efficient system.
Right.
I mean, we get to the weeds on how testing can be created in a biased way.
Mm-hmm.
You can dig into the weeds on how some people are not skilled at taking tests despite being otherwise competent.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, from a systematic standpoint, you can have systems that are built on secrecy and corruption, or
So-
we could have a system that's built on people who understand what they're doing and how to do their jobs properly.
And so, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up.
We are.
So, I'm Miss Andrea,
And I'm Miss Van.
and this is Cheese Press Publishing, and we do history videos, and we write.
Visit our
adventure.
website at cheesepresspublishing.com.
Do that, yes.
You can leave us comments and questions.
I want the comments
On
and
our
questions on
videos.
the videos, yes.
Yes, leave comments and questions on the video.
Yeah.
Until next time.